In a world where most people watch movies and then forget about them, these brave heroes join forces to watch them again and then talk about them. Join them in their epic journey as they go back in time, a decade and beyond, to revisit and break down films from a vast array of genres. Do these movies hold up over time? Are they classics? Find out on Retro Movie Roundtable. Starring your hosts, Bryan Frye, Chad Robinson, Dustin Melbardis, Lizzie Haynes, and Russell Guest. Coming now to headphones in your ears.
Welcome, all you lords, ladies, and knights of the Retro Movie Roundtable, where we watch movies, then talk about them. I'm your host, Dustin Melbardis, and joining me today is my good friend and co-host, Bryan Frye. Bryan Frye, how's the season treating you?
Evening all. Thanks for joining us tonight.
It's the perfect time of year. It's just the perfect time to get into some of our 35-year-old movies, some of our war movies, some of our Cold War movies, even though the temperatures are just perfect for me and Bryan. We're not going to go it alone. We've got a returning guest, Ryan Rebalkin. Thanks for coming on to the show.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks, guys.
Can you tell us about the Worst of the Best podcast, or maybe Zwick's Flicks?
Okay, yes, I run two podcasts of note that I think some of your listeners might find interesting. I just started a mini-series podcast called Zwick's Flicks, the Ed Zwick podcast, and each episode is dedicated to the filmography of Edward Zwick, the director. We start with his first film, and we're going all the way to his 13th film. He only has 13 feature films, so it's kind of like a mini-series, and it's been a really fun journey. And yeah, people check that out. And then I do one with my brother called The Worst of the Best podcast, where we take a best of topic or a topic with a best of list attached to that topic. We discuss the topic, and at the end we pick, independent of each other, what we think is the worst from that best thing. So
Okay.
that's it's fun. It's a lot of fun. It's a one I kind of like to plug the most because it has a wide range of topics that you just go through each episode and you can pick and choose which topic might appeal to you.
Love it.
Yeah, and I know you've done some Rocky content before. You've done some Rambo content before. Audience, I'm looking at this guy's video screen. Is that a Habs hat behind you?
Yes, it is. Good call. Yeah.
Yeah. So we all love to hone in on our topics, the things that we like to talk about the most. You guys tune into this show because you like retro movies like us, and if you are interested in going on a ride along with some of these series, you got to check this out from Mr. Rebalkin here. I want to start with our icebreaker questions. Ryan, I'll start with you. What's your favorite battle scene in a war or military movie?
I don't know if this counts. This is tough. I love war films in general. Well, I love films in general. So I like any good film, but there's certain films like war films I've always enjoyed. And everyone's going to say, of course, Saving Private Ryan, the big storming at the beginning, those type of sequences. But I have two that come to mind. One's in a fantasy realm and one's in a more of a realistic realm. There's a scene in The Thin Red Line, which I love. It's when they're... It's a very poignant, sad moment in the film when they're killing all the Japanese. They're tearing the teeth out of the soldiers. I don't know if you remember that scene, but the musical score, it's a terrible but beautifully shot scene at the same time. And then, so it's kind of a sad, great scene, but it's just done so well. But then a very moving one that makes you cry, of course, is The Riders of Rohan, in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
When the king is making his big gallant speech, he's hitting the spears or whatever, the staffs with the sword up and down the lines of men, and the musical score kicks in and they're storming with their horses. I mean, come on now. I mean, who doesn't get choked up during that?
It's incredible, and it's you mentioned it in both of your examples. The score, it's so
It is
frequently,
yeah.
It's the score that really brings something up to the top. Bryan, same question. What's your favorite battle scene?
Now for wrath. Now for ruin.
Now for ruin.
And the world ending. I am all about the Charge of the Rohirrim. He nailed it. I am so 100%. That's what I got in my notes. Well chosen.
That was your choice
Thank
too.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, well done, Peter Jackson. We've got a combined 100 years of film history sitting for doing this podcast, and two of us choose that right away. I guess that would probably be my top five. I went with I live for battle scenes. The one that I'm going to go with is about 20 years old now, is the phalanx scene in 300 against the invading Persian hordes. The idea that we'll talk about the score, the music drops out and you just have the holding of the shield wall. But then immediately following, it disperses, and you get Leonidas and his men pushing forward in that kind of slow motion. And our score isn't quite so operatic or classical. It kind of is rocking, which is really, really well done. And I know that 300 is a bit indulgent, but even still, like, it's breaking rank to clean up the stragglers and focusing on Leonidas' profile. It's really, really cool for me.
Real quick, just since we're in one of those films where there's like book and movie, I think one of the biggest misses in film history was I really dig reinforcement scenes. Like anytime reinforcements come in. And totally. So obviously Endgame has one of the, huge ones. But one of the biggest misses in film history was the last Harry Potter movie. The book illustrates a reinforcement moment that is golden. I mean, just one of those things where it, like, I actually would have chosen it for this if they had done it appropriately in the, in the films. It still brings me to tears a little bit how it happens in the books.
Like when you read it.
So, yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Well, and then just this year, we have Ugio with the cavalry in The Last Samurai coming through.
Oh yeah.
Reinforcement scenes. You're right. They have their own very particular.
I love reinforcement scenes.
Russell, track that down so that we can put in one of our future questions. What's the best reinforcements scene?
Yeah.
Ryan, what's the last movie you saw? It doesn't have to be in theaters.
Yeah, well, you're not gonna believe this, but literally last night I started the Rocky films with my kids. So,
wonderful!
Nice.
Yeah, as you mentioned, I do still currently do a podcast on the Rocky series. If you want to look at, if you're a Rocky fan and you're a Rocky nerd like I am, that's why I don't usually plug it, because it's very like we're only covering this franchise, but it's called One More Round now. It's called One More Round, the Rocky series podcast. It's kind of like a sequel to the old one because we're going one more round through the franchise. But yeah, we watched the first Rocky yesterday because my youngest twins are 10. So I'm like, okay, guys, let's go. We got to do this. You're ready for this franchise. And they loved it. And so we're doing part 2 after this recording.
Cool. Yeah, sounds awesome. What about you, Bryan? What's the last movie you saw?
I might be on an island here, but I watched the live action Ghost in the Shell. I absolutely love that movie.
Cool.
I'll probably force it in there as a dealer's choice at some point, but I'm a huge fan of cyberpunk, and I don't know. I was just like in that mood.
I remember working with a lot of people very excited about that coming out, and I just missed it. So
2017. So I got 3 more years.
Yeah. We are recording at the end of October, so I had just watched Evil Dead 1 and Evil Dead 2 back to back.
Perfect.
And
the same film twice.
Well, yeah, it is. It definitely jars you a bit. After this recording, I think I'm going to take on Army of Darkness as well. I didn't make it a choice to be like, oh, it's got to be all Ash all the time. But when you're in the mood, you're in the mood. So I'm just going to keep going. Tonight, though, not a horror movie and not really a combat movie. What are we covering tonight, Bryan?
We are doing the wonderful submarine movie Hunt for Red October, 1990.
From 1990, that's right, starring Sean Connery, Alec Baldwin, Scott Glenn, James Earl Jones, and Sam Neill. Budget of $30 million. It grossed $122 million. That is good enough for 6th in the box office that year. Placing just ahead of it is the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Check out RMR episode 280 on that. And just behind it is Total Recall. Number 1 movie that year, back when comedies could still place the number 1, was Home Alone. Check out episode 14 of our show. You want to cover that with us. IMDb rating for this movie is 7.5. For Rotten Tomatoes, the critics' tomato meter is at 88%, and the audience score matches it at 88%. So we all are pretty high on this movie. It did win an Oscar for Best Sound Effects Editing, also nominated for Best Sound and Best Film Editing. It won 3 at the BAFTAs for Best Actor, Sean Connery. We'll see about that. Maybe a little home cooking there. Best Production Design with Terrence Marsh, and Best Sound, and then also Best ADR at the Motion Picture Sound Editors Awards. Ryan, I want to start with you as our guest. What was your background with this movie?
This is going to be kind of tricky, and I don't think you guys knew that. I'm currently serving still in the Royal Canadian Navy, so I'm still by trade in the Navy.
Mm-hmm.
I got to be not careful, but this is my job. I'm a sonar operator by trade.
Wow, unbelievable.
So the character played by what's his name here?
You talking about Jonesy?
Yeah, Jonesy, the main dude there with the headset on, looking at everything.
Yeah, played by Courtney B. Vance.
Courtney B. Vance, that's right. That's my job. Now I don't work on a submarine. I do that same job on a ship. That's my training by trade. I don't do that as much anymore because as you move up in the ranks, you kind of just do different jobs. But I am a trained sonar operator, so. What I mean is I have to be careful. It's because there's flaws in the film regarding what they're doing and how they're operating and how they're finding submarines. And I can't speak to where they're wrong. I can't say where they're wrong or they're right, where they got it wrong or right, because that tells people how we do things.
Sure.
So I have to be careful. So I'm really going to have to be objective and just say, hey, that was a cool or not cool scene, but I really so badly want to say XYZ doesn't work that way, but I can't.
Yeah. Well, audience, don't ever let it be said that we don't get you the absolute prime best guests that you possibly could have. Yes, we've had heads of film departments. Yes, we've had independent filmmakers. We've had people that work in graphic design. And for the Hunt for Red October movie, we've got an actual sonar operator in here. But as far as with the movie, you have seen it before, I presume?
Yeah, of course. I saw it, of course, just a week ago in preparation for this podcast, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And I did see it when it first came out on VHS. I didn't see it I'm 90% sure I didn't see it in the theaters. I would have been 15 at the time of its release. I was a huge moviegoer at the time. Definitely loved action films, spy thriller films, all those type of films back then. I just don't recall seeing it in the theater, though I may have, but I definitely saw it on VHS. But as a film, as far as acting goes, of course, yeah, the acting's great. Like, it's a fun slow chase type film. I really like Alec Baldwin in it, so it holds up in the fact that I was engaged and I enjoyed the film. Sure.
Brian, what is your background with this movie?
I have watched this movie 5 million times.
Like, I can't believe it. I don't believe it. It's crazy.
Like, my wife hates this movie so much because of how much I watch it, and it also came into play that apparently her dad watches it a lot too. So we had like a crushing instance here. This was my first DVD. I watched this movie. This is the epitome of I don't know what to do right now. I'm gonna watch Hunt for Red October.
Can I just say, wait a minute, before you go on, I'm blown away. And when I went on YouTube to look at I always do this. I watch the trailer after I watch the film, even if it's a film I've seen before. It's been a while, so I watch the trailer. Yeah. I read the comments. I always like to read the comments of people. And you're not alone. Don't get me wrong, you're not alone. But look, I'm a huge Rocky fan. It's my favorite film. And I'm a huge Lord of the Rings. Those films make sense when I hear people, that's their favorite film. This film, I'm not saying it's not a good film, but I'm actually legitimately confused why anyone would label this their favorite film. Please explain to me how that happened.
I'm not saying it's my favorite film.
Or even you watched it multiple times.
I will say that this is a movie I probably have watched more than anything else. It is such an accessible movie. Like I got to vacuum the floor, Hunt for October. I've got to clean the windows, Hunt for October. Like it's such an easy film just to toss on and enjoy. I'm such a huge Tom Clancy enthusiast in his early career.
That's part of it. Okay.
And the book was great. I actually think this is one of the few murky moments where the book was actually maybe less worthy than the movie, just because of the extension that the book goes through that the movie doesn't. Like, they really boil it down to salient points in the film. But the first 5 books Tom Clancy wrote are crack. Hunt for Red October, Patriot Games. They're movies and books that I'm like, num, 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 num.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, as far as the movie goes, I'm not saying it is a great movie in terms of the annals of film history. I'm not trying to make that point. I am saying that in terms of rewatchability and the fact that it just scratches an itch, it is top 5.
We've got a history of having some real enthusiasts for the big boats. I am one of the big boat boys. And would you say that this scratches kind of the same itch as the Master and Commander? It's just like, dads want to sit down and watch this movie.
And I don't know what it is about naval stuff. Like, we're talking U-571, Crimson Tide. I mean, if it's on a boat, I'm on the boat.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I'll jump in here before we hit our break and say that I have seen this movie before. Greyhound,
awesome.
Yeah.
Greyhound is awesome.
You were the one that recommended that one to me.
Yeah, Greyhound.
I saw this in 95 or 96, way too young to see it because I would have only been 9 years old. And it was just something like, I remember that we are underwater. That's all I remembered about it. And the idea of what the Cold War was or any of this stuff wasn't salient to me. So it really, I got to come back to it kind of brand new, though I generally understood what's going on. And it was nice to really view this critically because I knew about its relative high ranking for the general populace. So I wanted to approach it and say, is this worth it? And I took some time to where I would agree with you, Bryan. I don't think it goes down in the annals of a great film, but it is, it's enjoyable. I did watch it twice in preparation for the show. Its cast gives you something to be like, oh yeah, I get to see him on screen. That's pretty neat. And the latent thrill, that we're not in fighter jets above the sky with those visuals. We are dealing with sort of the high stress of being under pressure or underwater. And that's great. That scratches that kind of itch for me. This is not like my favorite genre of movie, but if this is what you're looking for, then this will absolutely fit the bill. And we're going to talk a lot more about this movie. We're going to take just a quick ad break. When we come back, Bryan is going to reveal the plot of this movie. So audience, if you have not seen from 1990, The Hunt for Red October, make sure that you watch it before you return, and we'll see you on the other side.
Welcome to the All 80s Movies Podcast.
I'm Bill.
And I'm Jason. And this is the podcast where we talk about the blockbusters, the flops, and everything in between from one of the freshest decades for movies, the 1980s. So whether you're a brain, a jock, a valley girl, or a Jedi, we've got some 80s classics for you.
Do these movies stand the test of time? Are we discovering something new? Is there an 80s movie we're finally watching for the first time?
Join us each week as we dive into the cinematic nostalgia that inspired and influenced a generation. From the hits to the cult classics, we'll discuss our earliest memories, favorite scenes, fun facts, and our not-so-favorite movie moments too.
It's the All 80s Movies Podcast, now available on all major streaming platforms. Please subscribe and happy listening.
And we are back. This is your final warning. We are about to go over the plot summary from 1990, The Hunt for Red October. If you have not seen it, pause us, go watch the movie, and then hit play. Bryan, take it away.
Jack Ryan, analyst for the CIA, is brought in to figure out why the Soviet submarine Red October has gone rogue. The Soviet Union and the United States take to the high seas to find him. Maverick Captain Marco Ramius does everything in his power to evade them. After a series of near close calls, he contacts Jack Ryan through covert means and initiates a system to get his crew off the boat and to surrender himself to the United States. After a quick succession of firing shots between Soviet subs and themselves, they succeed.
This film is at the pace of orders being given down. I think this happens all within 4 days. And we are given the setting of the North Atlantic. There's an amount. I love that this movie starts with the idea of, hey, some facts exist, but the two military factions will agree that none of this ever happened.
And I think that's what makes this perfect is, like, I could have gone into a lot of different intricacies of this in the plot summary, but like the Cold War espionage aspect of this is a very undersold piece, even in the book. for the film, and like it doesn't really do it justice in the overall plot.
But it does at least set the scene, and Ryan, this is what I'm going to ask you. It does set the scene that this is unlike that opening icebreaker question for us where we say, what's our favorite battle? What's our favorite war scene? This is all quite muted, and it's about how we don't take that first step. Is that something that increases your enjoyment of a movie like this, where no one wants to be the one to set off the chain reaction?
Yeah, that was an interesting part. I think that's one of the more interesting parts about this film is the whole discussions outside of the submarines, the leaders of the nations, or not the wheelings and dealings, but the talking with the ambassador and all this stuff, all the side talk and the side messages, and just the idea that nobody really wants to be the one that starts it all, which is, I would say, it's pretty realistic in the sense nobody really wants to be the one that starts World War III. Like, nobody really wants mutually assured destruction. Like, even the craziest leaders in the world, despite what some of your Twitter feed might say, it's World War III isn't just going to happen tomorrow. Like, people do want to live, they don't want to die. So I like this film for that reason, that it kind of just shows you how Cold War works, what it's all about, but also shows you, yes, how close it can come to what it can come to with just one madman. So it does a great job balancing the two ideas between most people of most nations, no matter what nation, don't want world destruction, but it can only sometimes just take one madman to start it all.
It's a diplomacy game that we have to do things within the right plan. We have to not say the wrong thing. And then when we are in the room with our representative of an adversary nation, we have to be so careful. Bryan, is this something also that like increases your enjoyment of the idea that we've got several instances of chain of command, but everyone knows the risks. Everyone does. So just the wrong misstep is enough to really send us into Armageddon.
The Cold War is one of my favorite topics in terms of film, especially when it's done well. And I actually thought the natural, like, I don't want to call it a sequel, but a sequel to this movie was Crimson Tide, in terms of having a real issue where these nuclear armament issues come into play. And although there's no actual like intention of launching in this movie, that's why I think the natural next step is what happens if you're in an option where you feel like it needs to happen. So, no, I like the grit of this movie. I like the edge. I really like the social parody between America and Russia in this, because I don't feel like that they ever used it in a negative. It was, obviously Sam Neill and Sean Connery are Russian, but I never felt like they were using this as like a dissuasive thing or a negative thing. It was very appreciative, and this is something Tom Clancy does. It's not a negative on any culture or being. It's just how it is. So
yeah, these are the steps that all sides must take, and all actors within sides must take. The first 45 minutes of this movie, I think it does a pretty good job taking you step by step, logically and comprehensively enough, of how any action being taken, of subs launching, intelligence being acquired and then acted upon, of how we're questioning, we are a little bit scared. You have James Earl Jones's character, who is a character in the book series, I know, but you have the idea of what might this be, and all we need is the question in order to get us to the quote unquote action of what's actually going down. But Ryan, it's recovery from a desire from our Sean Connery character, from Marco, is these people want to defect. and there's this idea of like a dream that they want something about the United States. I think what's more interesting is the things surrounding the purpose of going west, of going towards the United States. I think that the defection was kind of an interesting reason why, but I wanted to ask, was that something that drove you, or were you more interested in what's going on surrounding the mission?
Well, I want to hear what Bryan, he had his hand up there. So Bryan, what were you going to say that I can bounce off? Because you've seen this movie numerous times. I'm going to tell you something. So this, before, I'm not escape. Maybe it was so wrapped up in the tactics of the film that there were some parts of me that was like, I was like analyzing how they were finding the subs. There's sub maneuvers, there are evasions. That I will say this. I'm going to ask this then. I'm a little confused without reading the plot again. Just remind me then, Bryan, what was Sean Connery's purpose? I've had to write a 3-sentence paragraph answer. I'm actually a little confused. What was his desire?
So they basically tickled it a little bit on when Jack Ryan is giving his SOB moment when he says he served in their officer corps and he's put in a position to select people willing to help him. The reason for all of this is his wife died on a drunk doctor's table.
Okay.
Based on the Soviet system of medical care. They kind of touch on it a little bit with the political officer saying, your wife is a beautiful woman. That's sad. So anyway, she shouldn't have died. It was a drunk doctor who didn't care in the Soviet bloc system. And that's basically what set him off. He had other reasons in the books for doing it, but that's basically the thing that popped it off. And then really like him selecting other officers, they were all denied promotion based on their birth, basically, like in a system where they're like, we don't do anything based on that kind of merit. That merit is still continuing. So he basically found other people who were skilled at their position. He trained them, and they were denied a positive egress for their positions based on the fact that the Soviet system was flawed, like in a lot of ways. So it's something that they kind of gnaw on a little bit in the film, but they don't ever really address. But yeah, all of these people have a bit to chomp, and they're all against where they're coming from, and so they go west.
Yeah, so that's what I was asking about is if we have the understanding that these people don't buy into the Soviet mission because they were not treated the same way as some of their other peers, then they have a reason for wanting to leave. But I guess what I really wanted to get at was this: does Sean Connery's drive, is that what's propelling you and watching this movie, or is it the other things about the tactics that you were kind of had your eye on? Or was it the military intelligence chain of command moving around? I feel like the want of defection just was the first step. And then we are surrounded by all these other really feastable things to watch.
Yeah, I think that was either the writing of the movie or just my lack of understanding, because I was following everything else pretty, there was a lost USSR sub, and of course America wants to know where it is, Russia wants to know where it is. So I was more interested in all that stuff. I was just, by the end of the film, even when they were going off in the sunset together, Jack Ryan and Marco were going off, I was even like, why are they in Alaska? Or wherever. I'm like, I was still kind of confused, like, why are they going on a honeymoon cruise? So even the ending was like, even the ending was sort of confusing and ambiguous, but maybe it didn't matter. It was the hunt. It was the whole hunt. Who gets there first? How is Jack Ryan going to defuse the situation? How is he going to get inside the submarine? So all those questions, that was what was going through my head. And I did find that part of it, fun to watch or fun to guess, because I couldn't remember after 30 years of not seeing the film. I couldn't remember how it all played out. So I guess I was just more invested in the chase part of it, as the title suggests, and not so much of the why we're here.
Well, the truly wild thing about this is everything that happens in the movie happens in the first maybe 40% of the book.
Okay, so what do you mean? There's more after
there's
the book?
Another 60% that happens after they hide the sub in that inlet, and
this could have been like a trilogy or a sequel.
Oh God, I mean, it is the most exciting point of the book, so I understand why they use that for for the film.
Well, that's good perspective, because that's what it feels like. It feels like what, Jack Ryan and this sub captain are just chilling together. It felt like it felt like there was
I would say I might have been a little hyperbolic there, but I mean, there's at least 40% of the book.
There's more to the story.
There's way more. And it's funny because I saw the film first, and I was like, oh God, I really dig this. And my parents were huge Tom Clancy fans. So I read it after, and I was like, there's a substantial amount that happens after this film. And I don't really know how to adequately tell people to prepare themselves for book versus movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, usually it's disappointment. Here, I'm holding disappointment for you, and that's what you get. But sometimes there's not. In this case, there's really, there's probably 2/3 of this book that don't need to be integrated into film. But I'm not saying it's not good. I'm just saying that it doesn't need to be in the film. So
the way that the film is written and presented to you from several different angles at once is the idea that we do have an end goal to root for. The end goal to root for is that missiles don't launch. That's an easy one. That's a grand one. Another end goal is that Jack Ryan, his beliefs are proven to be true, that he does just want to defect. He's not coming here to go rogue. The madman in the water is not what we're dealing with. He's actually put together a plan to save all of his crew that is not in the same boat, so to speak, as the officers who are felt betrayed by the Soviet Union. But he has plans for how to do all of this just to achieve his goal of getting back to fishing, something peaceful, the way that his dad or grandfather did. The confluence of several other people's goals is avoid a huge missile crisis, but also we are rooting for the success of our Jack Ryan. We're rooting for the success of from the original boat, Captain Scott Glenn, Bart Mancuso, and his sonar operator, Jonesy. We're rooting for them to be good at their jobs.
Go to bed, Jonesy. Go to bed. There's other people that work on the ship. You're not the only one.
He's kind of treated as, well, I guess you would know is that this was a team of people. It wouldn't just be one guy who's a savant.
No. You have and especially an American submarine. He's got lots of people that work. I can imagine I'd be coming on watch, and Jonesy's like, "Hey, no, Ryan, you go ahead." Oh, dude, you want to go back to bed? All right, I'll see you in 24 hours, buddy. You've got the show. No, you would have what's called a watch turnover. The only way you'd be closed up for 24 hours straight is if you were at war or battle stations. But even at battle stations, you have turnover. There's always people that you need your sleep. You don't want them going. The fact that he's falling asleep at his console and stuff, unsat. That's something I can share. That's not a secret. You have people to relieve you. You're not expected to have no sleep. You're allowed to be rested, and other qualified people come on.
Did he fall asleep at the console?
I just remember rubbing his eyes or whatever. He's showing exhaustion because he has. I think didn't his captain say, "Haven't you slept yet, Jonesy?" He's like, "No, I've got to do." And then his poor buddy had to be with him too the whole time. It's just. You have other people that work. That's all. I know it's a movie, but there you go. That's me look at the film like, oh my gosh, just go to bed.
Yeah, they just want him to be the face
Caltech,
of the genius. Yeah. And I like that he is the face of the genius, and I like his presence in we've covered a wide range of movies on this show.
Yeah,
whether we're talking about The Red Shoes and we're looking at a ballet production that is going all across the Mediterranean, or whether we're looking at a rom-com, but there are times when the subject is very niche. And Submarine, and including all of the sonar tech, you might think this is too niche for a wide audience, but I think they do an incredible job they illustrate stuff for you. They even do it on the screen. Like, this is how we're figuring this out. And I think they did a great job with not keeping it behind learned doors. Is that
okay? So can I comment on that part?
Of course, yeah.
Okay, so you're right. For the movie audience, that's what they had to do. That's where me as a trained in this profession, I'm like, none of that is how it's done. So it was I get it. You can't show what we do. And in fact, the Americans would know that too. The staff of the film would I know they work with the US military. A lot of these Tom Clancy films, they have a kind of a nice working relationship with Tom Clancy, of course. And so he knows that kind of stuff too. So they can't show how it's done either. So it's kind of it is a movie design. So what you're saying there, you were following, but what you're following doesn't happen.
What you're following is just like the movie shortcut for us.
I was watching this for the first time in 30 odd years, and I was like, holy smokes. So they didn't get anything wrong because they weren't trying to get it right, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So they were telling a story.
It's a nice workaround.
Yeah, and I get it. So I understood that. So I wasn't being critical, but I was also being like, well, what can they do? Can they actually show you? Because there's things that you have to analyze to see. This much I can say. Like, you have to analyze data to classify submarines, and how they were classifying the submarine on the film. I wish it was that easy.
Oh yeah. No, I think that's where
Typhoon 7.
Yeah, well, you can do that, but I can't tell you how. So, and that's the thing. Neither can, and neither can they. And
that's good.
I'm excited for this. This is like 30 years old. I'm excited for this.
Well, and that's where a movie, part of a movie's job, is to weave you in and out of the things that are like prescient, the things that are maybe a little past. Once you start talking about legal briefs in any courtroom movie, there's going to be people that don't really understand.
Right.
And
of course.
So when you start talking about, submarine technology, I think it's extremely satisfying to like sort of hear the way that they speak, though you may not get it. And that's okay. You're not intended to get the real thing. But you have to weave into the intricacy and then back to the general, and that's where I wanted to get to with with Ramius, with Sean Connery's character. Is within the first 10 minutes, you are shown he takes the political officer out.
Yeah, I loved that. I thought it was great.
I thought it was great too. But what this does for us, I think, is it sets up the idea of we have this goal that we're all rooting for. But can you trust Ramius? Bryan, what do you think? Do you see what I'm getting at? That like we're going to spend a lot of time on this character, but can you trust what we're seeing from him in command?
I actually, I want to go and target a different character. It's his, I don't know if it's his sonar operator, but it's the guy who constantly questions him. Who is my favorite? Yeah, my favorite character in the film.
His first name is Victor.
Yeah,
his first name is Victor,
like
and he's in the officers.
I think he's like third in command. Anyway, I dig his character so much because yes, he's completely on board with what they're doing, and he was totally cool with him killing the political officer. But he's like, "Hey, I need some input on this." And when Ramius is doing the maneuver to avoid the airborne torpedo, like he's questioning it because obviously you see why he's not keyed for higher command. Like he's doing aspects that are apart from what you would expect a junior officer to do to a senior officer. And it was one of my favorite character pieces from the film that you on occasion get to see without reading how these guys ended up getting put together, I guess is my point.
Well, I'll kick it over to you, Ryan. Is we do have a choice because we're being presented with Soviet officers, Soviet crewmen that the movie tells us this is what we wanted, but we also we are very used to being deceived by our characters on screen, which I think is such a joy. Is when you are an hour in, you're like, what is his game actually? Did you find yourself questioning whether or not he was saying the truth about what he wanted to do, whether or not there was any risk of there being some kind of nuclear ramification of his actions, or did you buy into like, oh no, this guy just wants to defect?
Well, that was part of my, I guess, my initial confusion about his purpose overall. I would just say, as him as a leader, I get why, within the film universe, why people fault him. I can understand that kind of leadership. I understand where it's both inspiring and, again, dangerous. It just depends what side of the fence you're on. But that's what I liked about this film is you had Sean Connery, playing enemy of the state, so to speak, where he might not have the American or the free world's interest at heart. I mean, he certainly was playing a game where the U.S. was not on board. Or like, dude, you have a nuclear submarine that can. I mean, just nuclear submarines are everything they said in the film. Yes, that will what a submarine can do to a city. And then some. So they weren't exaggerating about that. So they're very nervous about this rogue captain with an armament that can take out New York City or Los Angeles or California as a state. So that's what I liked about the film, though, is how within his ranks you could see that him as a leader, he's very beloved. And they're singing, they're chanting. He only had a couple of people that might have whatevered him, but that's a very real thing to have your troops die for you. And that's a good leader. So you might not agree with him, but he was a good leader, and that's that's actually good to watch. That makes for an interesting film when you, as a viewer, like, who am I rooting for? Am I rooting for this Sean Connery acted Russian leader, or am I rooting for Jack Ryan to stop him? It makes for a fun watch.
There's so many people to ask that question about. Is it possible that there's a targeted party audience that says Skarsgård's character, Captain Tupolev, do I want this guy who was like the star pupil of Ramius to actually hunt him down from the Red Navy side? But then we think about Scott Glenn, the Captain Mancuso, Bart Mancuso,
all great leaders in their own right.
And that's another just joyous thing about this movie is some of these guys have less than 8 minutes of screen time, but they all have an impact in the movie, don't they?
Mm-hmm. I think that this is probably a movie that people with spare screen time have some of the best character development that I've ever seen, because I guess development might not necessarily be the correct term, but I mean, you get to see why they are who they are. And in terms of Mancuso, you get to see why he's a good captain. You get to see why Ramius is a good captain. You understand why Jack Ryan is where he is in terms of his intel. And if you read the books, I mean, it's one of those things where these guys come up again across the Jack Ryan universe. And so this is it's not book one. Patriot Games is book one, but these guys come up over the course, and it's cool to be like, Ramius,
and so we do have these characters that might be given a little more time of day in a novel, but they weave in and out of this movie, and I think there's captivating characters. I think off the top of my head, just because I'm from Tennessee, we have our former senator Fred Dalton Thompson as some admiral. He's on screen for 2.5 minutes, but it's a neat little thing about like, oh, you have to come here before we send you out there. We do have some action here, going from helicopter down to top of submarine, a little bit of like, grip the edge of your seat type of thing. Bryan, you're laughing. Is that the most of our action here, or are you just saying like...
No, I mean, the action sequences or pieces, they're okay. I mean, they're 1990, so you have to keep that in mind. And they did a good job. And I think I'm allowed to say this. What I'll say is, when Sean Connery's character was driving the submarine into the torpedo, I was watching this as somebody who understands torpedoes and how they work. And I'm like, this is a suicide run. This movie fun. I'm not criticizing, but again, I was confused. I thought, oh, he wants to kill the ship, but that doesn't. I don't remember him doing that. So I was like, literally, very confused how they get out of it. So when they got out of it the way they did, I was like, oh, that's plot armor. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Well, it's plot armor, and also we need just one other way to show how Ramius is Maverick-like, to do what you would not expect when everyone else in the room is saying, no way, that's not what you do, and it works out. We are reminded that he's a very particular type.
Well, that's
character.
what it is. It's the Captain Kirk. Captain Kirk, whatever, Han Solo flying through the asteroid belt and a crazy, like everyone's gonna. No one does it like this. Nobody drives their submarines into torpedoes. That's why. That's the thing. Everyone in the crew is like, "Why are you doing this?" Yeah. And because that's the natural reaction that we should all have. Like, if I was on a ship and my captain of a ship started driving our ship into the torpedo's path, I might be a little confused and worried too. It'd be like, no, don't worry. I'll get it to not disarm, arm itself before it hits the ship. So I would be very nervous too.
It's not just the action he takes; it's the stoicism in which he takes it.
Sure, that's the movie fun. Yeah,
he's telling Ryan to steer into it. The other captain, Mancuso, is telling him not to,
which is the right thing to say.
Yeah,
don't do that.
And he does it anyway. And as he's doing it, he goes, "Oh, what books have you written?"
Right.
And he tells him, and he's like, your conclusions were all wrong. Like, just chilling. Like we're
fun.
Talking about
fun. It's a fun sequence, but I was very I was just, that's part of the problem, is like if I didn't know how this stuff worked, I would be less confused and just more enjoy the moment.
Right.
But I was like, I'm legit, like I don't get what you're doing at all. This does not make sense. Not computing with me, but yeah.
Yeah, it's like a former career of mine, I was in criminal justice, and it made it impossible to watch Law and Order. And
sure.
That's I mean, you put Mariska Hargitay on anything I'm watching, but the idea is it made it hard to be like judging the reality, and we all got to distance ourselves a little bit.
You do, and I understand that. I'm not one of those people. That's not real. I get it. It's just not very often that I watch a film that it's something I actually do. I don't know a lot of stuff in life. I'm not a musician. I'm not a cop. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a doctor. So I can watch ER and be like, sure, that's what you do. That's what you do to patients. I don't know that world. So it's easier just to go along for the ride.
My wife has completely crushed doctor shows for me.
Oh, there you go.
That's my wife is an MD, and I can't watch House. Anything. Like, honestly, like out of all the things we've tried to watch, she says that Scrubs is the closest thing to actual.
Oh, that's funny.
It's good, like, to know.
Medical show that in terms of legitimacy. I don't think there's a point where they're manually detonating. It was about them firing. So when James Earl Jones, they do the drop torpedo or whatever.
Right.
That was to maintain the
facade, the trickery.
The facade of them killing the sub.
Right.
So they didn't know they had him. Yeah. So they knew that he was defecting. So they dropped a torpedo and then detonated it. And he goes, okay, so that's us killing the sub because they're saying he's going to launch his missiles. So we killed him for him, but we're stealing the sub. It's right. A CIA maneuver.
Yeah.
So it's a self detonation. It's not like a thing. It's just saying, hey, we're not killing you.
I think this movie, unless you've already read the book, I think this movie, like the second watch, when you know how intelligence organization in coordination with a military operation, how on earth are they going to put this together where diplomatically it looks a certain way, where you can say just the right lie at the right time, and even the idea that you're going to see your cook who ends up being a part of the GRU right in the middle, right in the very beginning, as the one who witnesses the two keys, being united.
Which I super appreciated, because if you go back and actually like read historical works on this, the KGB wasn't the thing to fear. It was the GRU. Like that was the team of people doing most of the scuttlebutt for the Russians. And that was actually a more poignant piece from the movie, where it's like, yeah, it's really more, KGB is more of a Western, we use this as the big bad guy, but
the boogeyman. Yeah.
Oh yeah, the GRU is.
Before we get to our superlative section, I did want to bring up about our director and about the task, the cinematography as well. But from our director, John McTiernan, the idea that other works of his, right? Predator, Die Hard, Last Action Hero, Thomas Crown Affair. This is a big smile on Brian's face here. But we've got
movies I love.
We've got this director here. Then with the cinematography, how to make dark underwater exterior subscenes seem exciting. And then to make interior scenes, there was a real chance that there were people that could not watch a movie like this due to claustrophobia. But I thought this movie felt, you use the word, Brian, accessible. Ryan, what did you think about our task of making underwater dark scenes enjoyable to watch?
I love how submarines move in this film. It's fantastic. It's great maneuverability and speed and dynamics. It was fun to watch. It's hard to make submarines fun. I mean, it's hard to make them exciting because they're not as fast as your skimmers. They're some of them are, but it's underwater. Underwater by nature is a tougher medium to travel through than on top of the water. What I did notice, I don't know if you caught this, I don't know if this is a tangent or not, but between Die Hard and The Hunt for Red October, did you catch the moment in the film, in The Hunt for Red October, which was an actual, like, almost verbatim nod to John McClane in Die Hard?
I don't know this. What, Brian, do you know?
Well, it when I saw it, I was like, holy smokes. I knew that Jack McTiernan did both films, and he did Die Hard 2 years previous to this one.
Oh,
so you remember, of course, in Die Hard, when he's Bruce Willis's character in the van, he's like, come on here and have a few laughs. Da, 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 da. Well, Jack Ryan, played by Alec Baldwin, does the same thing. He's talking about the Russian cat played by Sean Connery. He mimics him while he's crawling on.
Yeah. Don't most things in here don't react well to bullets. Yeah, like me.
Yeah. So he's actually, Jack Ryan is doing his own crawling through a claustrophobic space the same way John McClane did. It's the same camera angle, the same everything, and he's talking about a previous conversation he had with somebody while he's doing that, a self monologue. So it was verbatim. That might be a director. What do you call it? A director. When a director does.
Yeah. No, I know what you're saying.
Token, a little signature. Yeah, something.
But
so you got to tell me, folks, if that's not a nod.
No, it's even funny because I think a lot of the negatives I've ever seen about this film are about Sean Connery being like horrifically Scottish.
Oh, who cares? That's
while being Russian. And one of my favorite parts of this is Jack Ryan mocking him. Ryan, most of these things don't react well to bullets. And it's like, yeah, like me. And I'm just like, not only is the piece that people are upset about that he sounds Scottish instead of Russian, but you've got a guy who's mocking him in the film
in that
Scottish accent. So that all's always been funny to me. Like it's not a knock; it's just amusing.
Well, we're talking about Alec Baldwin doing that accent and doing that kind of comedic type imitation. It should be noted, this is my Saturday Night Live nerdism coming out, so I'll be very quick with this. I don't want it to be too much of a tangent, but we are talking about Alec Baldwin. So during this time, he actually hosted Saturday Night Live after this film for promotion for this film, and he loved being on Saturday Night Live. He actually wanted to do stage and comedy and improv. He loved being on the show, and I think he was invited to do this again. He didn't want to be known as Jack Ryan, the action star. He wanted to do the voices and the acting, which we of course see later years with his Donald Trump and other imitations. That's his forte. That's actually what he actually enjoys. He actually enjoys being on a cast of characters like Saturday Night Live than he does on the films. So this is interesting to note that what you saw there was actually Alec Baldwin actually having fun. I don't know what was written. I don't know if he did that himself and they kept it, because actually I don't know. But I wonder how much of that was him having fun, making fun of Sean Connery, and they kept it in the film. I don't know what the discussion was when that was filmed.
Well, for what it's worth, my favorite Alec Baldwin is 30 Rock.
Jack Donaghy.
That's right.
Like,
of course.
That's
Alec at the best. That's what I think he enjoys that. That's what he enjoys the most is comedy. He actually enjoys comedy the most. Yeah.
That's really great to hear, Ryan, because I had not always, but there was a time when media pundits or writers about the Hollywood industry had always said, why didn't Alec Baldwin take off? He should have been a Harrison Ford type of big star. Big star, but no. What he liked was not exactly that. He didn't need to pursue that. Yeah,
he could have. It didn't interest him.
Yeah. But I did like his Jack Ryan, but like the sitcom star to leading man pipeline in Hollywood has never been stronger. Grow a beard and get jacked, and now you can be the next Jack Ryan. It's just it's too easy. But I liked this. He seemed to me like Dr. Ryan, as opposed to Jason Bourne with a PhD. All right. Well, hey, great talking broadly about the movie, but let's talk more about it in our superlative section. Y'all ready?
Of course.
All right, Ryan, I'm going to start with you. Who's the MVP of this movie?
Well, we were talking about him. I mean, I do love Sean Connery. I think he's great in everything he does, and I didn't expect him to be anything less than his Scottish accent. I'm glad they just, whatever. They just let him act. I don't care. Let him act, right? But I will say, I love Alec Baldwin. I think his character and his delivery of Jack Ryan and playing that character was spot on. I think he was, as an actor and as a character and leaning into his character the best. I think he nailed it. And it's too bad there was an alternate universe where he continued the role because he was young. He was like 30. So it's too bad it didn't continue because he was the right age at the right time. And but yeah, I think definitely he was the strongest point of the film acting wise.
He had to go be Adam Maitland in Beetlejuice.
Sure.
Bryan, who's your MVP?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Sean Connery on this. Despite the accent piece that I kind of feel is valid, like as an actor of his caliber, I think something could have been feigned there. It's a weird thing in film where I don't know if this is just an American thing or what, but just having an accent period equals foreign.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Where you have like a Three Musketeer movie and they all have British accents and you're like, they're French. What the fuck? So, sorry.
I got it.
But yeah, so anyway, it's just one of those things where it's like, just because it's a foreign accent doesn't mean it's like country relevant. And I don't know, maybe it's a nitpicky thing for me, but I do think Sean Connery does a magnificent job in this movie. And, outside the accent piece, absolutely.
I got to say, I don't think Tim Curry did a great job with his accent either. I think our Sam Neill did a good job with his as Vasily Borodin.
Yeah, he's like one guy's trying.
One guy tried.
And I got to tell you, like when we get around to supporting, like Sam Neill's my supporting is like, all right, here's the guy actually bringing the acting chops.
Yeah.
So anyway,
I would have liked to see Montana. Well, my MVP, I'm approaching this kind of weirdly. If this was like a sport or a match or like a finals game, then like the playing time MVP would be Jonesy. He in the movie solved the problem. He was the ace in the hole that kind of figured out where the sub would be. It's kind of like the Andre Iguodala MVP.
Yes.
Right?
I love that.
Yeah, that's what he was. Steph, Clay, Draymond, Andrew Bogut, Maurice Spates. They're
six man. Got the six man just going wild.
Jonesy kind of wins the day, I think. I don't know. And even though he's representing an entire team, if this were a real operation, but I thought it was a cool character to have on screen.
Well, he also has like one of the best lines where he's like outside of the sonar piece, and after they got shot at, and they were like, "Wouldn't change his mind, hey Jonesy," and he goes, "I think he had second thoughts." And I don't know, I love that line. That was a great line.
I also liked how he identified the torpedo coming from Tupolev very late in the movie as, nope, that's Russian. Like he's a savant. He's a movie savant.
Awesome. Man, I wish I had his skills. I might be a higher rank.
Pitch is too high. Sounds Russian.
That's awesome. I mean, that's amazing. I love it. I admired his skill. Maybe I'm just jealous of how good at his job he was. Maybe I'll have to say that. He was just so good at his job, puts me to shame easily.
Oh, Ryan, who's your best supporting?
Best supporting, I got to go with Scott Glenn. I love seeing him on screen. I feel like I never see enough of Scott Glenn. Every time he's in a film or he elevates every film he's in, he's a great, solid actor. I've never gone to see a Scott Glenn film. He's one of those actors, but every time he's in a film, I'm always glad to see him.
And I didn't think when I first saw that it was Scott Glenn that his role would be as important as it was, but he's my choice too. Nice. Ryan, what's your choice?
I already said it.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah,
Sam Neill as
dude, Sam Neill. Like I was already riding high on Jurassic Park, which is one of my favorite movies ever. And like you want to talk about people that you can't believe aren't bigger than they were. Sam Neill was one of those guys. I loved him in this. I would like to have seen Montana.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think he's got a European politeness that he puts on for this as well. He smiles toothlessly quite a bit in this movie. I actually thought to myself when I wasn't remembering anything about this movie, I go, wait a second, did he sabotage or something? Is there something behind that smile? And that's I love with spy thrillers or with anything like this where just about anybody could be the defector or could be the Confederate. Okay, let's go with a fun one. Ryan, who's your hidden gem for this movie? Or sorry, who or what is a hidden gem for The Hunt for Red October?
This is going to sound totally stupid. Maybe it's a cop-out. But when the movie first started, I hadn't seen the movie in 30-odd years, so I didn't remember like how long anyone's in the film for or for for any moments of time. So when I saw Gates McFadden playing Jack Ryan's wife at the very beginning of the film, noticeably she of course plays Dr. Crusher on Star Trek: The Next Generation. Mm-hmm. She was looking great and fantastic. Oh, cool! I'm seeing Gates McFadden in the Hunt for Red October film. She's like, we're gonna be late. We're gonna be late for our dinner point, whatever it was, and then she was gone for the rest of the film. So she was really hidden. She was a gem, and she was hidden for the rest of the film. So I think I took that literally. She was my hidden gem.
Let's put her. Yeah, she's on the 22nd gym.
It was it was heartbreaking. It's like that's Gates McFadden. She was big then. I mean, 1990. I mean, Next Generation was already in 3rd or 4th season.
I think they don't even bring her back as. No, they don't. In the next 2 movies in the Jack Ryan franchise,
it's a different actress.
It's Ann Archer. Who,
That's
right. No one's complaining about Ann Archer here.
No, I'm not complaining. It's just I was just like I said, I hadn't seen it, but once the film kept going and going and going, oh, we're never going back home. We're never seeing Gates again. So that's my hidden gem.
For me, I'm going to jump in. Is that I cheated and did 2. My first is Richard Jordan as Jeffrey Pelt. He's the not chief of staff, but he's the advisor to the chief of staff for the White House, and he's the one who's doing our sort of diplomacy negotiations with the Russian diplomat. And that Russian diplomat, Joss Ackland, is my secondary hidden gem. I think those 2 characters they aren't part of the action at all. They're part of the keeping up a good face type of thing. But I thought Jeffrey Pelt and Joss Ackland were good in that role. And the reason it really struck me as a hidden gem is because Joss Ackland was in the original Mighty Ducks movie as Hans, the Gordon Bombay's like mentor. And then in the 2nd or 3rd movie, he either had passed or like wasn't brought back for some reason. So they introduced Hans's brother, and it's another like Swedish actor or something like that. Brian,
also Die Hard 2. Diplomatic immunity.
Right, that's right. What's your hidden gem, Brian?
My hidden gem on this is actually Jeffrey Pelt. I love that actor. He plays one of my favorite. I don't really know how to put this without sounding like overly sentimental. His part in Gettysburg, where he's talking about his friend across the lines.
It's just impactful for you when you saw
it. It was just a super impactful thing. And like, this is the first movie that I had seen him in after that. And it's just one of those things where, like, I've actually recommended both movies to people before based on his sentiments, going from, north and south. And he's another guy that I'm just like, how is this not like a thing? Like, he was fantastic in this. So
another great thing about the show is this will remind you of the people that their names weren't top or second or third billed, but him. Yeah, I like him for sure. All right, tough one here, Bryan. You got to choose someone to recast in this movie. Who are you choosing?
Not tough at all. And this is not a slight on Tim Curry. I think he's a great actor. I just, for whatever reason, he was horribly miscast, and because of that miscasting, I felt his whole character out of place, his acting out of place. I don't know if he knew what movie he was on.
Weird. Yeah, it was weird.
It does feel out of place. And so I would replace him with Gary Oldman, who would have been 32 at the time.
This is the second time in the show, ladies and gentlemen, where me and the guest have chosen the exact same thing.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Recast?
Okay. Tim Curry. You're right. He didn't know what movie he was in as Dr. Petrov.
Yeah, it is weird.
I don't see any reason not to let Gary Oldman have a crack at that. Like, exactly.
But the thing is, I don't want Gary Oldman to play that character.
Sure. Well, we want the character written differently then, which is fine.
Yeah. Like,
I will say, as a backup, I thought instead of Skarsgård, we could have had John Malkovich as our Tupolov.
Oh, yeah. John's good at anything. So sure.
I love Skarsgård, though. God,
yeah, but this is the second time. I can't believe that we matched the exact same actor and replacement. So well done, Ryan. We must have something going right for it.
Pet Family, though, like, I am just a Skarsgård enthusiast. Like, that whole family just acts their ass off.
Bryan, what's your recast here?
I think my biggest point is actually Jack Ryan. No disrespect to Alec Baldwin. But
really? Wow.
Yeah, I've never really. Wow. I actually haven't gotten behind any casting for Jack Ryan. I don't like Harrison Ford. I don't like Krasinski. Like, none of them fit the bill for me. Notice I didn't even bring that one up. Chris Pine.
Who do you cast? There you go. You are in charge of resetting the universe. Who do you assign?
I picture a Cillian Murphy-esque character. Like, I want someone.
I need a name. I need a name, soldier. Give me a name.
Well, Cillian Murphy. Like,
no,
I picture somebody who's
great actor, but
I need more.
What about Edward Norton?
Nerd.
Too old.
I need more nerd with the brutality that Jack Ryan can bring, and I feel like that's Cillian Murphy.
Great actor, but you have to have somebody who has that. I think you need to have someone who's a bit, no offense to him, but kind of a bigger guy, a little bit tough. I will say this much about Jack: he needs to be able to handle himself in a fight. I know Cillian's a good. Well, I know Peaky Blinders, he takes care of business, but I don't know. Not a bad choice. Don't get me wrong.
That's it. Like, he's behind a computer most of the time, so like you can't have like a completely Jack guy. Like, we're not looking for like The Rock. So
no, like, please no. Please no.
Like, I just feel like you need a guy who can play nerd and butch at the same time.
I think you need to cast a more of an unknown then. I think someone who is in acting is sure, but I think you have to get not a household name. I think if you're going to reboot the universe,
that's fair. That's fair. But for show purposes,
we're doing it modern.
I'm thinking of a willowy gangster.
Sure.
Is my picture for him. And,
Great actor.
And here's the thing. My only issue with Harrison Ford was his perceived age at the time. I think he could have nailed it if you had gotten like Star Wars Harrison Ford.
Mm-hmm. That's fair. Yeah, that's fair.
Like if he had just been a little younger, I would have been game for it.
Right actor, wrong time. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure. Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, I was gonna say put some Coke bottle glasses on Josh Brolin. All right, let's get into some cinematic stuff. Ryan, what is your best shot of the movie?
Well, of course, come on now. It's the explosion underwater. So much fun to watch. We all waiting for that moment. We saw it in the trailer. I even knew that was coming before, even after not seeing the movie for 34 years. I love that moment. It's always fun to watch water explode. Who doesn't love that?
God, I'm so old.
Brian, what's your best shot here?
My best shot, I love the shot where they pan around them singing the Russian national anthem.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's great. Yeah.
It is a cool song.
And I got to tell you, I love it from the American side of it, where it's like, I thought I heard singing, sir. That made that shot more important. And as it goes, I mean, they transition from actual guys singing it to like a actual like group of people professionally singing
an actual chorus.
Yeah. And I love that too. Like that segue actually was so smooth that I gotta give it kudos.
They actually use that Soviet national anthem 4 or 5 different times, tweaked with as the main score of the movie, which is pretty well done. Most recordings you'll hear of that anthem are of a men's choir singing it. It's not quite the same as when you sing the Star Spangled Banner here, or I guess Ryan for you, Oh Canada, like where you have like a starlet singing before like a hockey game or something like that. It's always sung by a group of men, like always in all of the recordings. And I actually thought they could have gone bigger with it because it's just such a big part of that culture. But yeah, I dug that too. My best shot was it kind of a combo of shots. It's when Jack Ryan is talking to Bart Mancuso on his sub when he's on the con, and he's just, all I need is 2 minutes, but Scott Glenn will not interrupt like what he's doing with command of his ship, and so there's times he's asking the diving officer to like go down 1,200 feet, and the shot, the angle of the camera begins to show how they're going downward. Feels very real. There's a little bit of shake. And I thought that was pretty cool. I know that like it's during the time when like Ryan is telling him about the idea that him being a madman and like wanting to get close to fire missiles is likely like a bogus report. And then Scott Glenn is essentially looking at him, but still giving his commands to all of his officers. Like that was a real BA moment. I liked that quite a bit. Let's move to the best scene. Ryan.
The best scene was when Jack Ryan was told the last minute that he's going to give the brief. I know what that panic feels like in the military when you're given that last moment tasking of, oh shoot, I've got to talk out of my butt a little bit, and you're nervous as heck. But you are able to pull through, and not only pull through, you might even look kind of good. But I just love the acting of Alec Baldwin. I love the meeting afterwards, where when he's being talked to privately, and he's being seen as, oh, this guy's more than just an analyst. So I like that whole moment there, the whole sequence of being caught off guard with the having to give that brief, but also his emergence of somebody of note. I thought that was a great transition of the character.
Yeah. Brian, what is yours?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. But my favorite scene is the submarine combat at the very end, like him orchestrating like degrees down angle. Like I just like that's just something that is awesome to me. Like I love that general idea that you can just spout off stuff and then it just speaks it's an itch. Like
there's something there, Brian.
Like you want to be a part of it. Like it makes you want to be a part of that sort of cog.
I think a lot of movies, in particular, whenever there are orders being given down a chain of command, what you are witnessing on the scene, on the screen, is when those orders break down and people are panicking and flailing and abandoning their post or whatever it is. That's what battles look like. But in in all of the scenes in this movie, when the order's given, the order's like undertaken, and it's pretty cool to see, and you feel like you're a part of it.
Like for just to give you, for instance, like most of the stuff that I insanity wise like quote while I'm alone driving my car are things like down, 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 take us deep, take us deep. Like it's literally quotes from movies like this where I'm like my thought process is
we must beat to quarters.
Yeah, and but it's funny because it's like that's where my head goes for these things. This movie is great for that. It's absolutely golden for it.
Well, you watch a movie 5 million times, and it's going to have to stick with you somehow.
True.
My best scene is the sort of, you can't call it cafeteria scene, kind of mess hall scene where all of the officers are talking about like what their wants are and questioning each other a bit. Is this tension in a high pressure situation underwater very, very much reminded you the feel of this, like we're all risking our lives. This is completely out of order. You mean to tell me he didn't slip on his tee? You know, it's all very tense, and
it's great.
I like that feeling.
I actually wish we had gotten more conversation, especially from the engineer. I feel like the engineer is one of those like quiet guys. Like you always kind of suspect he's the saboteur, but
yeah. Are you talking about the guy that was wearing the red uniform?
Yeah. He's
Lieutenant Melbardis, played by Ronald Gutman. That was actually my best wardrobe moment. So that's a nice.
No, he's fantastic in this. In fact, I love the part where he's talking to Ryan. He's asking him for a cigarette, and he gets a Russian cigarette, and he's like, "Oh."
He's turning green.
The reason that's funny is Jack Ryan in the books is a very habitual smoker, and like he's always trying to like snake cigarettes because his wife, an MD, is totally against it, and she's like, "Who's been giving you cigarettes?"
That classic tale.
Yeah.
Ryan, what's your best wardrobe or makeup moment?
Well, actually, I really loved. It's not really not a criticism, but an observation. When the Russians were wearing their naval uniforms inside the submarine, that you wouldn't necessarily do. But they're dressed to the nines. I thought they looked sharp. So the actors looked very sharp in their uniforms. But you wouldn't wear those uniforms working in a submarine.
Exterior thing, not
right. So wardrobe spot on. Yeah, they look great. They look fantastic. But even the captain and the officers, they're not wearing those out. Those are for like parades and ceremonies. Yeah. Looks great on film, and they look great wardrobes. They look Sean looked sharp. He looked like a Russian captain. But you don't wear them during those moments, but for wardrobe, by all means, they looked really great. They looked like Russian naval officers for sure.
Yeah, you nailed it. They really, especially if we're going to categorize them as an American audience as others, they're the buttoned up Soviets. They're following this protocol.
That's just it, sure.
Yeah.
Maybe they do. Maybe I'm speaking out of my butt. I'm just using my we wouldn't be wearing those on our ships. Like when you go to work daily at sea, you're wearing your work dress. You're not wearing ceremonial dresses. Yeah.
Bryan, what's your best wardrobe or makeup moment?
I think I'm going to go with Jack Ryan on this. I loved him in his like suit on the helicopter, like just put it in a GD memo. Like I love the idea of like this guy can clearly handle himself, so like that part's out of the bag. But I love the idea that you're putting a guy who has chops that are legitimate, but also like I'm still wearing the stuff I wore when I left England. Like he's not only flown across the ocean to CIA headquarters, but then he gets bounced onto a carrier and then onto a submarine and then into the Atlantic and then onto a Russian submarine. It's the same outfit, like the whole time. Yeah. So anyway,
by any means necessary.
Yeah.
Ryan, what's the thing about this movie that you would change? One thing about this movie you'd like to
tag Bryan's earlier discussion about the film and the book. I'm changing my answer. I want less stuff in the front. Get to the middle part of the film faster and give me more of the ending. I want to see the adventures of Sean Connery and Alec Baldwin's characters after that, Ride of the Sunset. There's a story to be told there, apparently, that the novel has. Now I really want to see it. So if I was to redo this film, I would get to that part of the book as well and share that on screen.
It's a good point. Yeah, Bryan, what's your change one thing option?
I know you hate this, but there's so much more to this book. I would love maybe 30 minutes to just address what actually happens after this book ends, or what happens after the film ends.
We'll put it on Retro Book Roundtable Patreon.
It was so much fun. In fact, it's a weird point, but this is the book that I queue up on my audio whenever I drive to Montana, like literally for Sam Neill. I have a buddy who is a lawyer in Montana, and I literally listen to this on my way to and from skiing with him because of Sam Neill. So yeah, there's just a bunch of that is, I feel like it's important, but I also can say that maybe people don't care.
Yeah. My change one thing is similar to what we've talked about a bit. I think the movie has an incredible final, like, big scene, but it's not the ending. The ending wrap-up dialogue between Jack Ryan and Ramius is a little too pie in the sky peachy for me. Then the to roll credits over, like, the stuffed bear that he's bringing back to his kid. Like, this isn't the note that this movie's supposed to end on. I don't think. I think there's more. So then I was thinking, like, what I'd love, if we are trying to wrap it up fast, which is what the movie, bam, we're just gonna end it with this kind of, like, it's almost a green screened with them with the water behind them. Is show me a silent, no dialogue, well scored sunrise over a crystalline lake in Montana, with Ramius casting a line while Shostakovich Novorossiysk chimes plays, like, and then fade to black. The talk about how it all worked out, or like sharing Christopher Columbus quotes, like that was all too much for me. Like, that was not the tone of this for me. Plus, we save ourselves 90 seconds if we get to cut the opening bear sequence with the little girl, and then we get to, jump right into, I think the perfect opening for this movie is Jack Ryan explaining what turbulence actually is. That's how you start the movie. I don't know. I know I'm stretching the change one thing, but I think this button on this movie doesn't quite match.
You don't actually get why he has an issue with it. So Jack Ryan's character was a Marine lieutenant who went down in a helicopter accident, and it messed up his back. And that's why you have Skip Tyler ask him how's your back, and
yeah, Jeffrey Jones.
And he basically, like, his wife in this, who's a physician, gets him set up with someone who actually fixes what the naval medical screwed up. So anyway, not to get.
I know you can't help yourself.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where, like, there are just pieces of this that they allude to, but they don't actually, like, talk about at all. Like, there are pieces to this that are.
It's kind of for completion's sake for anyone that is doing I know the book. Why didn't you have?
It's for the mace.
Yeah, I understand.
But the weird thing is, like, I get to fill in those pieces.
Urgent message for all vessels. Comrade Bryan will not be finishing this podcast, because when you take too long telling tangents and stories about your favorite movie and book, your wife will come and take you away from finishing the podcast.
All right, let's finish with our best quote here. Ryan, what's the best quote of the Hunt for Red October?
You're going to hate me. You're going to hate me. And the sea will grant each man new hope, as sleep brings dreams of home.
Hey, it's a cool quote. And maybe that could be part of a larger post crisis moment. But I just felt as if that section by itself wasn't fully fleshed out. Like there wasn't enough there. And especially if we have some audience. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, you're right. It seems artificially implanted, but I'm a sucker for sea quotes and the idea of a new land. And so, of course, Captain Ramus is quoting Christopher Columbus, and Jack Ryan tags it with, "Welcome to the new world, Captain." The idea of a new world, new hope, a happy ending for the captain. So I don't know. It's cheesy. Like I said, it's two characters right after the sunset, almost like they're going to live a life together. But I like that quote. Quoting the quoter, but still, I like that quote.
Yeah, and nothing wrong with the quote. So no, I'm not going to hate you. It's a good quote. And actually, once I was watching it for the second time in prep, I was like, it is cool. I wish there was just more. But for me, I actually chose it as soon as I heard it on the first watch through. Second watch through, I heard a lot of other cool stuff, but the one I wanted to go with was our Richard Jordan, Jeffrey Pelt character. He's talking to Jack Ryan in that big boardroom. He's coming over and he's kind of telling him like the idea of like politics. Listen, I'm a politician, which means I'm a cheat and a liar. Yeah, and when I'm not kissing babies, I'm stealing their lollipops. Mm-hmm. But it also means that I keep my options open. Like he's very slick, greasy guy in a suit that does some good work with our Russian diplomat way later. But every story needs this kind of guy who knows the way the world works and like can identify his own stuff.
That's great quote.
All right, so Ryan, I want to give you one last shot to plug the project the active project you're on.
Sure. Yeah. If people want to, basically, you can even just Google my name. It's in the show notes, so you'll kind of see everything that I do. However, the worst of the best podcast. That's a great place to start. So if you kind of like the cut of my jib, maybe you don't, but if you want to hear me crack wise about a variety of different topics, from actors to conspiracy theories to music, you name it, check out the worst of the best podcast. Make sure it's our show. So make sure you're going to see about 85 episodes. There's another one. I kid you not. Somebody tried to rip off our show. They almost copied our logo verbatim. And yeah, I'm not even joking. They called it the same name, same type of logo. It's very frustrating, but they haven't done anything in over 2 years, but it's still out there. So I just want to make it clear that we are still active. So if it's not been active, it's not them. I mean, it's not us, it's them. So anyways, check us out, the worst of the best podcast, and you can just investigate me from there if you want to see the other stuff I do.
Yeah, find the good show. Find the voice you're listening to.
That's right. Yeah.
Do that.
This voice.
Well, we have come full circle here, and I want to give you the platform. We rate our movies out of 5 stars, 0.5 being the worst, 5 being the best, for The Hunt for Red October. How do you rate this movie, Ryan?
Yeah, overall, I'll say this. When I first saw this back when I was 15, I was bored to tears. And I wasn't a dumb teenager. Like, I don't think I was dumb. I watched some highfalutin TV back then. I mean, I saw The Godfather. So dialogue-driven films were never a problem for me. Partly, I enjoyed this film a little bit more now, partly because of my job, my understanding of naval warfare, all that kind of stuff being said. So it was kind of interesting. So I say all this. I'm going to give it not a solid, but a score of a 3 out of 5 stars. I think it's a serviceable film. I think it's fine. I wish Bryan was here if he's listening to this. I just want to stay for the record. It blows my mind that him or anyone finds this film rewatchable over and over. And I watched Indiana Jones over and over again because the action sequences, the rolling boulder, the horses with the tanks, like Back to the Future, I've watched over. Those to me are rewatchable films. I don't ever tire of the Rocky, Back to the Future's, Lord of the Rings. And this is not a criticism. I'm just bewildered. Yeah. And I think it's fascinating that people love this film that much. I think you need to see it. I think it's a film worth watching, but I am legitimately bewildered that anyone reinvestigates this film for fun.
Well, let's look at the scores from Rotten Tomatoes. 88% would probably seem high for you.
It's crazy. Yeah. I must be in the minority. And I see a lot of films. I consider myself a pretty decent gauge of films that are good or not. Again, I'm glad people are enjoying it, but I I wouldn't be surprised if I saw an audience score of 65 and then maybe a critic score of 73 because it's Sean Connery and it's a highfalutin film. But wow, 88 for both film and audience, critics and the audience. That's good for them.
I'm going to jump in and say I mimic a bit what you're saying. And I did this 2 years ago on this show where we covered Enter the Dragon. And I was very quick to say how poor of a movie that was. It's a bad movie, but it's got Bruce Lee in it.
Yeah.
So that's why people rank that movie high, but that movie is not good. Fair. And our guest for the show is actually kind of like family member, and I don't mind saying it to her. Like, this movie, Bruce Lee's cool, and his aura is bigger than this movie ever should have been.
Sure.
I don't remember what I scored, like maybe 1.5. Like it was bad. And
I almost feel like I'm giving this like I really want to give it a 2.5, but I feel like Bryan likes it so much. I think I'm giving it an extra half point for Bryan. He doesn't hate me.
So check it out. I did that same thing, not because of Bryan, but because there were detractors from this movie that I couldn't actually get over. And I think that Sean Connery, as a guy who I watched, and a lot of our co-hosts on the show are big Bond heads. So Sean Connery was my James Bond for a while, because I did the thing where you go to Blockbuster, you rent them all in a row. And like Sean Connery mattered to me as a child. And then seeing him old, especially like The Last Crusade, that's my favorite Indiana Jones movie, is the one with him. And so like this character, I go like, if it were shorter, colder, blunter, if he was playing a Russian character, probably would give it a higher score. But he's not. Sure. He's playing Sean Connery.
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
And that was kind of tough for me. The idea that our second officer, that our Sam Neill character, Borodin, was the only one that was like trying to attempt to do the Russian accent for the actual non-Russians. That was tough for me. I watched this movie going, I think this is a 3, but the last 20 minutes is a very impactful, like, you've got 20 minutes left. Things aren't going to go hunky-dory when they meet on the Red October. And the mixture of stuff that happens with the cook who ends up being a GRU officer, like that person who is on the ship. Then you've got the USS Dallas, like jumping in and taking the torpedo off course. And you've got the other ship on the top with James Earl Jones in it. Like, there's a big mix of stuff. The ending scene for me bumps it a half star. So wow. I'm going with a 3.5 on this, but I think I would say that 88% is inflated because look, there's a Sean Connery movie. That's what I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not going to attempt to get into Bryan's mind as to why he's a 5 million time watcher on this. But
I find it fascinating. I'm bewildered, but bless them to do so.
But I've also seen The Fifth Element 30 times. Like that's rewatchable for me.
There we go. We all have our film. We
there
all
we
have
go.
one.
Yeah. Bryan, what's your star rating?
5 stars. Yeah.
Well, hey, thank you so much for being on the show, Bryan.
My pleasure. Thanks for inviting me and thinking of me, guys. I mean, it's always not a risk, but it's always, I'm coming onto your turf. So thanks for trusting that I would hopefully didn't lower your show. So thank you.
Certainly not. No. And you're going to bring some of your listeners over here, and some of our guys are going to go check out your podcast too.
I hope so. Yeah.
This is normally where I would ask Bryan to help me pick a movie for next time, but this is one of those rare weeks. We are not doing a new movie or a movie for us to cover that's new to any of us. We have our special episode where we count down our top 10 movies from exactly 10 years ago. So all 5 of us are going to be providing our top 10 movies from 2014. You will not want to miss that. So thank you, lords, ladies, and knights of the Retro Movie Roundtable. We invite you to reach out to us. We want to hear from you, especially if you have stuff to say about submarines. Subscribe, rate, and review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Pandora, or wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Give us a like on Facebook, follow us on Instagram and Twitter at movie_retro. Email us at retromovieroundtable@yahoo.com. Producing and providing this podcast is fun, but not free. We invite you to support our show at our Patreon page at www.patreon.com/retromovieroundtable. Any contribution would be much, much appreciated and go towards making the show better for you, the listeners. As always, thank you for listening, be good to each other, and watch more movies.